So why did I write White Gold and what became the E.J. Kane mystery series? Well, first of all, I'm an elected prosecutor. So what I see is cruelty and chaos that never makes sense. Crime is evil and wicked and never makes sense. We can't order the universe. Crime fiction does order our universe, though. At the end of the day, the guilty party's punished, even in the true crime and even in the things where the endings are left partially open. It's still so much more palatable than what real crime does to our society and the damage it does to our lives. Another thing is, I see a lot of issues. One of the issues that I've been dealing with is all of these Brady lists. And I was a proponent of the idea at the start, not so much the Brady list, but the Brady letter, where we send a letter when we have an officer who's falsifying evidence, who has falsified an offense report, who's tampered with evidence, those kinds of things, to tell the world and to tell the defense bar, look at this case closely. We can't trust this certain part of it. There's some issue as to this officer's integrity, and you decide how great that is and bring it to the court's attention. So it's a laudable effort at first, but we've gotten so aggressive, some prosecutors have, with these lists, and even the defense bar who want people on these lists, that somebody comes back late for lunch and they have a poor excuse. Well, that does not go to their integrity. And so we've just really gone over the top with this. And I thought about it, there's no due process if somebody's wrongfully accused. And I have had some officers who were wrongfully accused, which I thought was an interesting thing. And the idea that you could have the highest of the high, somebody who is a FBI type investigator or a Texas Ranger who is held in such great esteem, all of a sudden go to beyond nothing and held in no esteem. So I wanted to address that. Second is, our legislature in Texas, because of some wrongful convictions, frankly, that were truly wrongful, and I'm glad that they were set straight, they have passed a tremendous number of writs, a writ system now where convictions never really end. They're never final. They can always be something brought up. And so I had a case where a very young child suffered really a heinous injury. And then years later, I have to go back and tell this child, well, they're trying to reopen this case with a motion or a writ, and it's frivolous because it doesn't make any difference at the end of the day what they're challenging over the scientific evidence, but we have to address it and we have to deal with it. And I have a duty to let you know in case the case needs to be tried again. That's awful hard. Nobody seems to think about the effect that that's going to have on the victims or on the community to have cases that never end. So there's a lot of momentum for the actual innocence complaints, and I'm not opposed to that at all. Some of these wonderful, great authors write these really compelling books about that. But I wanted to present the other side, because another thing about criminals is they're very, very good at gaming the system. They game everybody to get to where they're at. A lot of times they're dealing with substance abuse issues and things like that, where they are taught to live double lives all their lives. So they really make out some of these writs without them having any sort of merit. I finally ran across a crime that did make sense. I thought these fellows out in the oil field, they took a waste product and were able to figure out a way to turn around from that and to steal something very, very valuable, hence the white gold casing head gas that they were stealing at the time. And it was going on, pretty good little syndicate or ring in our area. Now, we cast a wide net on it, and not everybody who got charged was guilty. There were certainly some innocent people involved, and nothing about the book other than just that type of crime is truthful. Everything else is fictionalized, because I write fiction on purpose, because I certainly don't want to disparage anyone, and I don't want to remind any of the victims of what they've gone through. Also, I wanted to try my hand at writing a detective novel. I love to read detective novels. I read all of the greats, and there are some tropes that are just so common. They've just become so much, they're kind of tiring to me. The detectives always got to have a weakness, alcoholism or PTSD from their heroic service. And at the time of all of this, we were dealing with a whole lot of changing social norms in society. And I wasn't necessarily against some of those things. Some of those things needed to change, but it was happening very, very quickly. And it was very difficult for people with maybe more of a conservative or Christian worldview to figure out where they fit into society and find our role again and our footing again. I also was watching at this particular time, Afghanistan war was ending, and that terrible loss of life at the end with those Marines and those parents. And I thought, oh my goodness, what if somebody had to go through that? So not only would they suffer the lowest of the low in their professional life, but I spent a lot of time sitting across from people who've suffered tragedy like that, and that really displays their character. What they were before comes out in spades, whether it's good or bad. And it's really intriguing for a writer to kind of address that and get into it. And it's so distracting for a person trying to get their life back in order after they've been dealt a horrendous blow like that. Otherwise, a lot of the things in the book, the human trafficking, that's the real human trafficking that I deal with as a prosecutor. So I wanted to address that because so many times it's a television version that doesn't match what I really deal with. So I kind of did both. I kind of brought in a little bit of reality into the story, but not enough to change the fact that it's crime fiction, and that it's intended to be crime fiction and escapism and a detective novel. And I hope you enjoy it. My name's Michael E. Jimerson. I hope you enjoy the E.J. Kane mystery series.